Hello, YouTube viewers, and welcome to another episode on Go Figure Customs YouTube channel. A few things to start off with. Got a lot of views on the review for the JoyToy USMC figures. Thank you for viewing. Got a few comments on that as well. One of the comments was that the sound is pretty low on the video. I do apologize for that. I am shooting this on iPad mini. So if you're familiar with my podcast with my best friend JD, General Geekery, you will undoubtedly know that we take great pride in our lack of knowledge about technology and just how we can pretty much do everything low tech but still be entertaining and informative at the same time. If this YouTube channel matures into something where it's a regular basis, I'm doing it frequently enough to justify a decent piece of equipment to film videos with, then I'll look into it. But if I really want to count the veins in my wife's neck, I just tell her that I'm thinking about buying a new camera.
You're not getting a new camera.
There you go. So, considering how many I already have, I can kind of understand why she doesn't want me to spend more money on one. So we'll see about that. So in the meantime, I am sorry the sound is low. I'll see if there's something else that I can do about that. But I've definitely noticed kind of that rough, scratchy sound on this when I'm moving the iPad around, especially like on the when I did the video for the restoration of the Moray. It drove me crazy, and I filmed it. So I'm thinking might have been the Pelican case, or not the Pelican case, the OtterBox that was on it at the time may have contributed to that. So we'll see if I can fix that on this end. So not only did I get the first set of the U.S. military Armed Forces figures from JoyToy, which were the USMC, but I did end up getting the Marine Force Recon set, and kind of scattered in through there is the Army Airborne set as well. So the second and the third 1/18th scale set, and they're all standing right here, which is probably not going to last very long with the dogs running around. My wife's getting ready for work, so we'll see how long this stand of dominoes lasts. I wasn't planning on doing a second review video for the second set of figures because initially I thought they were just going to be a bunch of repaints. While they do use the same buck, and some of the equipment is reused. Some of it's not. Some of it is new sculpted stuff. So I thought it kind of warranted a review video and kind of a follow-up video to some of the stuff that I talked about in the first video with the first figures. I did end up getting these guys some Marauder Task Force weapons, just what I had laying around. I'm going to end up going back to work here in the next, I don't know, like week or so. So I just gave them what I had laying around. BBI weapons too. That's a BBI gun, and that's a BBI weapon as well. So what I'll probably end up doing is while I'm over in Ukraine is sitting down and putting in a big order for guns for all 15 of these guys while I'm over there, and to replace the pistols and the rifles for everybody. Although on the Marine Force Recons, I kind of like those rifles that they came with, so I might not do those. I don't know. We'll see. One of the things that I was going to talk about that I didn't really mention in the first video was the little replacement joints that they come with. these are shoulder joints. So what I think is fairly interesting about these is, like, the G.I. Joe figures and like Marauder Task Force figures, the elbows have a peg, and for the elbow joint, it just pegs into the upper arm. You heat that up and you can pull it out, and it just pops right out, and you can swap forearms that way. It's a pretty easy, that was pretty easy customizing trick. That was one of the things that I really liked about the G.I. Joe 25th anniversary, is you could finally swap out forearms easily. The Real American Hero figures, the vintage G.I. Joe figures, had the rivet there. While it's not impossible to swap out forearms, it's incredibly difficult, and it's a task that I can't do myself. So you had to like the whole arm for a custom, because you couldn't swap out the forearms very easily. I know people that do. People swap out rivets all the time. Just above my skill level at this point in time, and not something I'm going to probably learn how to do, because I don't really do Real American Hero customs much anymore. I do one occasionally, but very rarely, and if I do them, I usually do them as gifts for friends. But I liked the fact that this shoulder joint pegs into both the upper arm and the shoulder, the torso. I think that's unlike other figures where the shoulder joint in the arm has a rod that connects the whole upper arm into that joint. And if that breaks, then you've ruined that arm. As long as you're careful with these things, if you're probably not going to break that shoulder joint. This is fairly easy to pop in and out just by heating it up. And I'll tell you what, if you're going to get these guys, this is just like, please, please, please take the time, heat these guys up. Spend like an hour, sit down with that big old coffee cup of water, heat it up for 3 minutes in the microwave, and boil to, the water will be boiling, and let your figure sit in there with the equipment for about 3 minutes, and then take them out, and then start manipulating the joints. You want to do it at the closer end to the joint. So start moving it, start manipulating it close to, so if you're going to do the shoulder joint, move it closer to the torso, not at the distal or further end. When you do the elbows, move it closer to the upper arm. When you do the wrists, do it right at the wrist joint. Don't use the arms as fulcrums, because that's how you're going to break something. Do it close to the joint, but move all the joints to loosen them up. I think, honestly, that's the only way to go with these guys. And I'm going to say, in general, that is probably solid advice for any of the any of the smaller batch toy companies like JoyToys figures, or I don't have any sitting here, the Devil's Toys War of Order figures, or maybe even Marauder Task Force or Hacks. Those have a higher quality than most of the rest of them. Even the Dime Novel Legends figures come with a little disclaimer slip saying to heat up the elbow joints before you start playing with the figure. And these, I'll have to do a review on these. I like these figures. They're solid figures. They're good figures. But even that one says to heat up the joints before you start playing with it. And I think that's good advice for any of these small batch toy companies, is heat up your figure, then manipulate the joints, then take the time to play with them and equip them and pose them. I see people complain, it's like, I shouldn't have to heat up my figures to play with them. Yeah, you know what, you probably shouldn't have to, but if you want these figures and you want them not to be broken, you need to. It's just good advice. So that's what I did last night, was I took the next two teams and I sat down and I heated each one of them up individually and then equipped them and loosened the joints up. So out of the 10 that I worked on last night, I had 0 broken joints. I had 0 problems with these figures last night. Let's see here. One of the things I was going to also mention before I forget is this little piece here that I didn't know what that was. I had somebody comment, didn't comment on the video. They sent me a PM on Facebook. I believe that was... so my buddy Stuart Weaver commented, PM'd me and said that particular piece of equipment is called a save sling. I was not familiar with that piece of equipment at all. So it looks like something that clips onto you and then you clip it on to like the airframe when you're on a helicopter or a C-130 so you don't fall out. So that's kind of a neat piece of equipment. I didn't know what it was. Please feel free to comment on the video. You don't have to PM me. If I don't know something, please go ahead and comment on the video. You're not going to make me feel like an idiot if I don't know what I'm talking about and you correct me. So don't worry about it. Comment on the video. That's why it's here. So feel free to comment. Let's see here. So got the first batch with new guns. I like the fact that the shoulder joint pegs into the upper arm instead of having a rod through it like G.I. Joe figures do. Let's get into looking at the next batch of guys here. So we'll do the airborne guys first. Figure A. All right, this is pretty cool. This is figure A. It comes with this shoulder-mounted rocket launcher, which I think is pretty cool. Because the top opens up and comes with a little projectile that fits right in there. That's all pretty loose, so that's something that's going to be quite easily lost. These guys all came with unique, weapons different, not unique weapons, but weapons different than the first team, which is kind of a smaller, compact M4. I do like the sculpt on this one. This one is nice. I like these better than what the Marine guys came with. The vests are similar sculpt. It's pretty much the same vest from about the waist up. From the waist down, it does have some new pouches sculpted to it, and the groin protector, and on the back it's got a pouch sculpted to it, and kind of the body armor going over the butt. I haven't seen that on body armor previously, but there it is. The head, I think, is different sculpt than... Let's look at that. Yeah, the head is... I thought it was the same head as the Marine guy with the closed face mask. Here, let's try and get these in here. But it is a different... It is a new sculpt. The downside is this head is on all of the figures. There are no unique head sculpts. That's the head that comes with this whole set. All 5 guys come with that head. One of the things I do like about that head, though, is the way that there's kind of like indentations in the lenses, and it's kind of got some... It looks like maybe some dark paint, or maybe it's just the way the light reflects off the plastic. It kind of looks like you can kind of see the eyes behind the glass, behind the lenses, but not to the point where you can actually see the eyes. So, I mean, it has a very realistic effect to it, which I really think is fantastic. It has arm pads, shoulder armor, and lower leg armor, and then the pouches, the leg pouches, there's no pouch on the left leg, but the pistol holster, they've already put them on this figure, on the figures. The leg armor and the thigh armor probably are removable. I mean, if you heated this up, you could probably pull those off if you wanted them for customs. The vest is already on, it's already pegged, closed. That's one of the things I liked about this over the Marines, is that all of the stuff is already on the figure. All I had to do with these Airborne guys was just heat them up and loosen up the joints. That's it. Oh, and there's a clip on the back of the vest. See it there, right there, right there. It's kind of awkward with this particular weapon, but that's the best way I can get a gun to stay on this particular guy. It works better with some of the other guys, which you'll see in a minute. But that's figure A. This is our rocket launcher guy. So the buck is the same, but the vest is pretty close to the same as the Marines, but it has some additional sculpt. The head's a new sculpt, but it's on all of the guys. And all of the gear's already on there. So I really like that. That's one of the things that I noticed with the Russian guys, and I should have brought those guys up here too. The JoyToy Russian figures, is they started off having to put all of the gear on at one time. You know, you had to put all the gear, you had to glue the gear on, which was really a pain in the ass. I mean, it took 45 minutes to an hour for each figure. Granted, there were only 3 figures in the wave, but it was a pain in the ass. The further they got into the waves that were coming out, the last wave came with all the gear attached, and I really liked that. I was kind of 50-50 on that while I was doing it, because putting the Marine Force Recon guys together, I was like, yeah, this is kind of reminiscent of putting a G.I. Joe vehicle, vintage G.I. Joe vehicle together. You know, you pull it out of the box, and it's not put together. You got to put it together, and then you got to sticker it before you can play with it. I really enjoyed that as a kid, so I kind of enjoyed taking the time to put all these guys together, because I did the Force Recon guys first, even though that's the 3rd set, because I really wanted to see those guys. But when I opened up the 2nd set, which is the Airborne guys, and saw that all the gear was already on, and I had just saved myself about an hour of putting these guys together, I was kind of relieved, to be quite honest. The one thing I don't like about these guys, the Airborne guys, is the holsters don't seem to be, they don't hold their pistol very well at all. It doesn't slide all the way down in there, so that is definitely a drawback to that. All right, so actually the guy with the rocket launcher wasn't figure A. I already took these guys out, I already threw out the boxes, so you know, I don't, if you really want to know who figure A and figure B and figure C is, yeah, sorry about that, I got them out of order, but it's not really that big a deal, because you know, these guys don't really have code names or anything. So that was the rocket launcher guy. The next guy over, I'll just go, I won't, I was going to look at the sheet that came with it, because it has a picture. The little sheet has a picture of the figure, so you know, and then has a letter up in the corner. I just realized that last night for the first time. So you know which figure is which letter. If for some reason you're OCD enough to need to know that. I'm not, but there you are. So this is a figure next to him. Again, we got the same little M4. This guy comes with a nice little breaching shotgun, which I really like. Marauder Task Force makes a real nice one that's very similar. I recommend that. I've got that on a couple of my guys. My John Wick has that particular gun because he used that in the first movie. And then the pistol. And you can see here the pistol does not seat well into that holster. So I'm going to get something that's just a little bit smaller. Probably Marauder Task Force or BBI, because the BBI pistols are really nice too. but the head sculpt's the same. The vest is the same as the one that was on the first figure. So I think the vest is is the same for all 5 figures. The head sculpt is the same. The pouches on the legs and the lower legs are all the same. So this is a very uniform team, which, you know, I mean, I like variety, but uniformity has its place too. These guys, I was thinking about this last night when I was working on these guys. These guys kind of remind me of the strike team, the SHIELD strike team at the beginning of Winter Soldier when they raided the boat. And they also kind of remind me of Bane's team that hijacked the plane at the beginning of Dark Knight Rises. Kind of that high altitude, equipped to raid in an unusual environment. So I kind of do really like that for these guys. I do like the figure, the uniformity of the figure. This guy is the next one. He comes with that goofy looking saw, and then the M4 again, and that's the only thing that's different. Comes with the pistol, of course. They all come with a pistol. None of these guys came with a knife, which the Marines, I think every one of those guys, the first set had a knife. All right, well, it is what it is. The next guy comes with the same M4 and a tomahawk that clips into that clip on the back really nicely. That's the only difference there. Hi, buddy. You having fun? My dog's watching us. You're a good boy. Good boy, Jack. And then the 5th and final guy is our sniper. He came with the same sniper rifle that the Marine guys did, and of course that M4 again. And the pistol, which you can see does not seat in that holster at all. At all. So one of the problems that I had with and there go the dominoes, with that sniper rifle was getting that bipod in there. I mentioned in the previous video that I had a hell of a time getting in there because that bipod is very delicate, and the plastic they've used on the guns is very, very hard and very rigid. Well, I came up with a neat little trick for that. I took my pocket knife here, and you can see the edge, how it's thin and then gets thicker as you go up. So what I did was I took the clip on the rifle, I put it at the end of the knife tip, and then I pulled it up the back of the blade, not the sharp end, but the dull end, until it spread the clip just wide enough to get the bipod in there. It's a really hard plastic, but not hard enough where it's going to break if you do that. And then the bipod just popped right in. So try that trick with if you get these guys and are having a hell of a time getting that bipod in. Run the back of a knife blade in the bipod clip, spread it out just enough so the bipod clips in. And I almost broke the bipod on the Marine Forces Recon guys. No, the Airborne guys. All right, so that's the Airborne team. The head sculpt is the same, the vest is the same. They all come with the same M4. They all come with the same pistol. Pouches are all the same, body armor's all the same. The only differences are the rocket launcher guy, the saw guy, the tomahawk guy, shotgun, breaching shotgun, the sniper. So they each have a unique weapon. Other than that, completely uniform. All right, so let's go to the third set, sorry, and this is the Marine. They're just Force Recon, but Force Recon is the Marine Special Forces, so I just use that nomenclature instead. All right, so Force Recon guys, this is the first one I grabbed. New head sculpt. None of the other figures have this head sculpt in the whole line. The vest is the same though as the other Marine figures, which, you know, kind of stands to reason. They're both Marines. both Marine teams. There should be some uniformity there. I would have preferred a different a different layout for the vest, just something different. If I wanted to use it for customs and just for variety, but it didn't. So it has the same vest as the first set. The pistol seat's a little bit better in the holster on this guy. I really like this particular rifle, and I can't for the life of me remember what this particular model of rifle is, with that receiver on the magazine, but it's got the foregrip, and this one has a silencer sculpted on. Silencer's not removable. The pads on the pouches pads on the thighs are different from the first set of guys. Everything else is the same. It's the same belt as the first set of Marines, and the same buck. I mean, they use the same buck on all of the figures. I really like the head sculpt on it, though. The next guy that's sitting here has the backwards cap, beard, and Oakley's. And I was gonna see if it's same head as the first Marine, if it's just repainted, and it's not. It's a new head sculpt as well. So one of the things that I might have dinged these guys for in the last video was that all of these figures were just repaints. To some degree they are, but there are differences. This one has the pouch sculpted to the newer, well, it's not newer, these are the same pouches that come on the first wave of Marine guys. They don't come with that little safe strap either, and most of these guys didn't come with a knife. So the equipment is a little thinner than that first wave of Marines. The third figure, new head sculpt again. I like it. The rifle's a little different. It doesn't have the suppressor on it, the silencer on it. The vest has the backpack sculpted to it. I'm still not a fan of the sculpted on backpack. This guy did come with the tomahawk that clips in. The backpack does open. One of the things about these guys, this wave, is all the equipment was off the figure again. So we went from the first set of Marine guys, which had all their equipment off the figure, had to heat the stuff up to get the equipment on the figure. Then we went to the Airborne guys, which had all the equipment on the figure already. And then we took a step back and went to having to put the equipment on the figure again. And it took me about an hour to do all 5 guys. One of the things I was going to mention, if you're going to sit down and do all these guys at one time, use the hot water for one figure. Put it in the microwave 3 minutes. Use that for one figure only. If you use that water for a second figure, it will have started to cool down, and it may cool down enough to the point where it doesn't soften up the joints when you start manipulating them, and you might break one. So 3 minutes in the microwave, just the water, for each figure. Take the time, it's worth it. Trust me on that. You don't want to break these guys. And then the 5th and final figure, unique head sculpt. We got the different gun again. Vest is the same. The guy with the backpack, almost forgot, he's got a knife sheath sculpted on there, and that knife is removable. That's the only one of these guys that came with a knife. But he's got the newer thigh pads, the newer holster, the gun sort of seats in there okay. The head sculpt is kind of nice. It's to me that if I can get it to focus, that head sculpt is very reminiscent to me of the Lieutenant Torpedo figure from the Spy Troops line, maybe. My buddy JD will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but there was a Torpedo figure that had a head sculpt very similar to this, and to me it's very reminiscent of it. And then he's got sort of a kind of half-assed ponytail coming off the back there. At first when I looked at this, I thought it was because it's kind of hard to describe, but on the sides it looks like they didn't get all of the head on there. So I thought there was a piece of hair that might clip into this little peg, but it turns out that's just a ponytail. So as long as you're looking at the head from the front, it's fine. If you look at it from the back, it's kind of goofy looking. Everything else is the same on the figure again. So those are the 10 new guys. They all came with the little plastic case, which doubles as a figure stand. And each one comes with the 6th box, comes with one of the little figure stands and extra weapons. It also does, there are extra hands in here with different poses, which kind of reminds me of the Microman figures. If you've been in collecting toys and been doing customs for a while, you might remember Microman from about 10-15 years ago. They were all the rage back then because they were super articulated compared to anything else out there on the market. The downside of these guys, nobody came with new forearms. New forearms only came with the first wave of the Marine figures. So heat these guys up before you start playing with them, so you don't break them, because you have no safety net on this. There's extra guns as well. Let's get those out real quick. And extra joints. It did come with extra joints, but like I said, on my first set of Marine figures, the joint itself broke off. The peg broke off in the peg hole, so it wasn't something that I could just swap out a new joint for. I had to Dremel that hole out and put a new joint in there. It ruined the joint. It ruined the hole to the point where I had to get out a Dremel and take that out. So just be careful with these guys when you get them out of the package. Heat them up. It's worth the time. It's worth the effort. The weapons, extra weapons. We got two of the ones without the suppressors, and then two of the ones with the suppressors, and then the third one was like that. But there were no extra ones of this, which is the one I really like, actually, which is a shame. Extra hands, so you kind of gotta, like, 2 fingers up. And then all fingers up. And your extra hands number in 6. I think there's 6 extra hands in there. Not a lot. So no extra forearms with these guys. Keep that in mind. I really like the Force Recon guys. I like the color scheme on them. The olive drab and the tan were great. I love the head sculpt on these new guys. The vests are a throwback to the first wave, and I really actually do like the guns on these. I probably won't swap these guns out, save maybe the sniper, but man, take the time and heat them up, man. The Airborne guys, where is the package for the Airborne guys? The Airborne guys just came with extra hands and extra joints. I don't even think they came with extra weapons. So, once again, these things are a mixed bag, man. You gotta really want these if you want to throw them down. If you want to throw down for these things. It's still really hard for me to say, yeah, you need these guys. It's really hard for me to recommend these. I'm still kind of sticking to my first video, my recommendation in the first video, that if you don't want to if you don't have the money for them, if you don't want to spend the money, because they're $70, $70, $80, $80, I think, for the set of 5, and you can't get them individually. If you're going to throw down for them, you got to take the time and be careful with them when you get them out of the box and heat them up before you start playing. So if you're not willing to put the time and the effort in for that, skip these guys, because you're going to break something and you're going to be mad. When we did our podcast, General Geekery podcast, I usually had a way of reviewing figures, and I don't remember exactly how I did it, unfortunately, because I liked how I did it. Using 3 criteria. One was how it looked in the box or on the card, because a lot of people are mint on card or mint in box collectors. So in the box, no, these things don't look good in the box because they come in a box that you can't see in. So these are not good for mint in box display at all. And then loose, I think these are fantastic if you take the time to heat up the joints to make sure they don't break. They are still fragile, though. I think I'm still worried about breaking these. And then customizing potential was the other criteria that I used. They're expensive for customs. I do tend to spend, I don't usually have a problem spending a lot of money on figures for customs. I've spent, I'm doing a couple of customs using the Dime Novel Legends figures and Hacks figures. So, since the Dime Novel figures are small batch, they're expensive, and that's the thing with small batch figures, is they are going to be expensive. The fewer pieces that are produced, the more they are going to be per piece. That's why the stuff is more expensive compared to anything that Hasbro's making, like the old G.I. Joe stuff or even Star Wars figures. Is they're not making as much. It costs more to make them per piece than it does for Hasbro. And that's why some of these are fragile, is they don't have the QA process that Hasbro does, or Mattel. So for customs, there is a lot of potential here. I mean, between these 15 guys and the Russians, which I don't even have here, if you just started customizing and you just got these guys, there's a lot of just like inner swappability between the vests and the weapons and the heads that you can do. They're not as modular as the Marauder Task Force stuff, sure, but you can still change stuff out. The legs, I was going to see if you could swap the legs out with the Marauder Task Force legs. But I forgot to check that, so I'm sorry about that. Might have to do that and then mention it in another video. But the torsos are different enough that I don't... Yeah, I need to check that. I'll do that, and I'll do another review maybe. Customize potential of these guys. So customizing potential, I'm still kind of stuck on that, quite honestly. I can't give this a yes or a no, honestly. They're expensive. But are they totally cost prohibitive? Depends on your budget. It really just depends on your budget. I, I don't have a problem spending a lot of money on fodder figures if I have a specific idea in mind. If I know what I want to make and know exactly what I need to do, know exactly what figures I need to make it, I will spend more money. I don't have a problem spending the money to get stuff for a specific idea. If I'm just going to buy figures for fodder, I'm a lot more stingy. Because if I buy something and I don't use it, and I don't need more stuff sitting around, especially stuff that I'm not going to use. I do have a lot of room, but that doesn't mean I want it cluttered up with shit that I have no use for. So 50-50 on whether these guys are good for customizing or not. I think the potential exists. I think they're fragile enough that they might not be good for customs, and it depends on what you do with your customs too. Like my buddy Lance Johnson does photo stories, the Devil's Chronicles photo stories, and his stuff's amazing. But he's got to do a lot of manipulation with his customs. So I'd be really wary using these in the aspect that he uses them. Will they stand up to that much manipulation? I just don't know at this point in time. I haven't had these guys long enough. Even the Russians, like I said, I've got them displayed on my flag right now, and that's probably where they're going to stay. I don't tend to. I was going to say don't tend to play with my stuff. That's not entirely true. I don't plan on playing with these guys very much because I'm worried about breaking them. I'm going to reorganize the deck of my flag and integrate these into the battle scene, and that's probably where they're going to stay. So they're expensive dio pieces at this point in time. And so customizing, if you're going to use these guys like my buddy Lance does, man, I'd be careful about that. But like my customs, when I'm done with them, I'm home for such a short period of time. Once I get one custom done, I'm already hip deep in the second custom already. I've got such short time at home that I try and get as many customs done as I can while I'm home. So what I tend to do is it goes into a Delta on display, it goes on my flag, or I've made a custom card for it and it gets carded right away, and then it goes up on a wall. I take a few pictures to post up on my Facebook page, obviously. So for me, if I was going to use these guys for customs, I'd be okay with it because it's going to be a dio piece or it's going to be on a custom card. It's going to get custom carded. Let's see if I missed. Let me think real quick and make sure I didn't miss any aspects of this, because now that we've done a review of these figures, I have one more thing that I want to do with them. All right, so that will be the end of my review. Are these guys worth it? I'm leaning more towards yes than no than I was in the last video. They're still expensive, but I think you get what you pay for. I think the quality is there as long as you take the time to heat these up before you start really getting into them to make sure that the joints don't break, to loosen these guys up. One of the things I was going to mention is the heads on the Airborne guys are really loose. They're really like bobblehead almost. I didn't like that too much. Aside from that, I think the figures are worth it because the weapons are better, the sculpts are fantastic, the articulation is great, and these really are the only high quality 1/18 scale realistic military figures out there at this point in time, aside from the elite forces, which I don't like because the articulation is shit on them. So customizing wise, I am still 50-50 on that. I am not going to use these guys for customs, at least not in this point in time. but other people, I've seen people using them for customs, and they do lend themselves well to customs. So 50-50 on that one. You're gonna have to decide that one for yourself. One of the things I was going to talk about today that I think is kind of interesting is the scale. Historically, GI Joe is 3 3/4 inch tall. Starting with the real American Hero guys, not the original GI Joe guys, which were 12 inches tall. So 1/18 scale is what the community accepts that the GI Joe figures are. What does that mean? What does 1/18 scale mean? It means one inch equals 18 inches on a regular person, on a person in real life. Common scales in toys include 1/12 scale. What is 1/12 scale? 1/12 scale is your Marvel Legends figures and your Mythic Legends. Is that Mythic Legends? Am I saying that right? The 4 Horsemen figures. I recently obtained one of my first Mythic Legend figures from my good buddy Marcus Aiken, Dark Horse. I'm going to customize this. I don't know why I would love this figure, and I've got a real cool idea paint scheme that I want to try with that figure. I have one of the trolls for my Hacks figures, and it is really cool. So that's 1/12 scale, and one of the other common scales in toy collecting is 1/6 scale, and that's going to be your Hot Toys figures, your Sideshow collectibles figures. I've got a couple, I think like 1/6 scale, 12 inch, 1/6 scale Iron Man figures, and I've got a couple of the Hot Toys Navy SEALs in 1/6 scale. Those are common scales. They do go in reverse as well. 1/35 scale and 1/42 scale, I believe, are common scales getting smaller. I think 1/132 scale is also common in like gaming miniatures. I might be off on that. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Anything smaller than 1/12 scale, I don't collect it at all. Acid Rain has I think it's 1/25 scale, and might be 1/24. And JoyToy also is doing a smaller scale. I don't get anything smaller than 1/18 scale. Although I do have a couple of the Lego-sized minifigures for Iron Man. I mean, it's Iron Man. Come on, it's me. I'm going to have some Iron Man anywhere, in any scale. So that doesn't count. So scale varies from company to company, though. Some are taller, some are shorter. So let's do a quick comparison in different toy lines. All right. So I've got another line of dominoes up here that I'm going to use to show you the scale between common 1/18 scale figures. I got this idea from a buddy of mine, Jimbo, and I think I'm the only one that calls him Jimbo. He's a prolific customizer and a good friend, even though he's a huge pain in the ass. Who, when he does figure reviews, will line up the particular figure with other figures in 1/18 scale to show how they interact. That's not the word I'm looking for. How they relate to each other size-wise. So, thanks to Jimbo, we are going to do a nice review with common 1/18 scale figures. So let's do that real quick. All right, we're going to start with the Vitruvian Hacks figures and relate to a JoyToy figure. You can see they are pretty much the same height. All right, hopefully the sound isn't too bad on this. I'm sorry if it is, and it's going to be a little bit jittery. I will try and fix that in post. But I'm doing this with an iPod and a belly full of 2 cups of coffee. So, oh yeah, that is really jittery. Sorry. I've tried to not use figure stands where possible, because even if you know that there's a figure stand, it becomes a perspective issue. And even if you know that the figure stand is changing the size on the figure, it's still hard for your brain to take that out subconsciously, because it's just how your brain perceives perspective. It's really kind of an interesting thing. So let's continue. Next, we've got the Pursuit of Cobra or 50th anniversary low light. You can see he's a little bit smaller than the JoyToy figures. Then we're going to go to a vintage low light. And now we're on the placemat. I should have taken off before I did this, and a figure stand. So he's got some height added to the figure. And you can see how this is a good example of how it's hard for your brain to kind of relate to this, because he's almost as tall as the JoyToy figure next to him, but if you take him off the figure stand and even off the placemat, the height changes significantly scale-wise. I mean, it might only be millimeters for the figure, but that millimeters translates to actual inches. Next, we'll move over to the vintage Star Wars vintage line Dark Trooper, next to a couple JoyToy figures. He is on a figure stand there again. He looks a little bit taller than the JoyToy Marine next to him, but he's about the same height as the Airborne Trooper next to him. That's where that figure stand kind of throws you for a loop. I couldn't get him to stand on his own. Same with, if any of these guys are on figure stands, I couldn't get them to stand on their own, or didn't want to take 15 minutes to get them to stand on their own. So it kind of skews the perspective a little bit, and I'm sorry for that. Next, we'll go to Hiya Toys Red Hood. He's a little bit smaller because you consider that he's wearing a helmet and his head is smaller than the guys next to him who are wearing like a watch cap and a tactical helmet. So the head is a bit smaller. Height is about the same. Build, he's a little thinner. So this guy is a little smaller, even though he's 1/18 scale. Next, we'll go over to the Dime Novel Legends figures. He looks a bit taller than the guy next to him, but you can see again he's on a figure stand. And the figure stands that these guys come with, figure stand that these guys come with is a nice solid chunk of plastic. So it adds it adds at least a millimeter, which translates into a couple inches. Next to the JoyToy figure. And then we move off the placemat again. I should have taken that out, I'm sorry. By the time I noticed it, I had most of these guys set up. I'm like, I'm not doing this twice. So here we have a Marauder Task Force figure with a G.I. Joe head. This is a Storm Shadow custom I'm working on, or will have been working on, just can't seem to get an idea to work. The Marauder Task Force figures are, they look like almost the identical height. Then next to Marvel Universe Deathlock. Deathlock is a bit of a bigger figure. Like Star Wars figures, the scale has changed throughout the history of the line. This was just the first one that I grabbed, and Deathlock is, in the comic books, he's supposed to be bigger. So the scale is actually pretty nice because he is supposed to be a bigger guy. Next to the JoyToy figure again. Next to the 1/18 scale Hellboy, and a lot of people weren't aware that there was a 1/18 scale Hellboy 2 line. There were 2 different packs with 3 or 4 figures. I think 4 figures in each pack. And they were really cool. And then there were some exclusive single carded figures of just Hellboy that were a little different for the Hellboy 2 line. And then finally, there's an Acid Rain figure. Next to the JoyToy figure, you can see I got him on a figure stand, and he's a little bit taller on that figure stand. If we take him off the figure stand, he's probably about the same height. So let's pull back here. Hang on. So there is a quick perspective shot of scale on how these relate to various toy lines. I think this was one figure from about every 1/18 scale toy line that I have. The only one that I skipped intentionally was there was a Green Lantern 1/18 scale line. Actually, there were 2. Mattel had one. They were crappy figures, and then there was a nicer one, and they were Comic-Con exclusives. And I have those figures, but I didn't think that it was really worth it to go get to pull one of those out to put up here, because not a lot of people have those. These are the common lines that people have. So as you can see, they interact very well with other 1/18 scale figures. So, maybe that's yet another reason to get these guys for you. All right, so that's it for this video. Hopefully you found it worth it to watch yet another long video reviewing figures that I've sort of kind of already reviewed in a previous video, but haven't. And I thought it was worth it to do, if nothing else, the scale comparison to kind of help you decide if these are figures that you want to pick up, if you're going to mix them in with your other figures, with figures from other lines. Oh, I should have thrown a Elite Forces figure in there. That's my dog farting. Nice, Izzy. Real nice. Charming. All right, so if that dog fart didn't turn you off, thanks for watching the video. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share the video. All the social media stuff. Comment, ask questions, correct, in the comments below. Seems like there was something else. I'm always open to suggestions for new topics for videos. So, especially if it's something that I can do while I'm in Ukraine, because I got a lot of free time when I'm not actually working, and it would be nice to be able to do something over there while I'm gone, just for even just for my own mental health, like my custom car tutorials I did while I was in Ukraine. But I think that's it. Comment, subscribe, questions, please feel free to throw them out there. And I think I'll be doing a review of the Dime Novel Legends figures next, or just one figure, because the figures that I have a couple other ones, but I've already torn them up for customs. So I think I'll do one of those coming soon. And again, like I said, I am way open to suggestions for other topics. So thank you for watching, and check us out next time.